Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It's a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624 or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you this hour as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off. SSL and unsecured sites are going to be, or SSL rather than unsecured sites rather, are going to be the standard and are going to be required starting Chrome 68. Now that came out today. Google is only going to be supporting these SSL sites. Now when I say supporting, I don't mean that you won't be able to visit a unsecured site. That's not what I'm saying. But beginning in July 2018, with the release of Chrome 68, Chrome will mark all HTTP sites as not secure. And developers have been transitioning their sites to HTTPS, making the web safer for everyone. Progress last year was incredible, and it's continued since then. I'm getting this from security.googleblog.com with the headline, "A Secure Web is Here to Stay." We'll have that link for you in the show notes. Now, they go on to cite some statistics. Over 68% of all Chrome traffic on both Android and Windows is now protected. Over 78% of Chrome traffic on Chrome OS and Mac OS is protected. And 81 of the top 100 sites on the web use HTTPS by default. They write that Chrome is dedicated to making it as easy as possible to set up HTTPS. Mixed content audits are now available to help developers migrate their sites to HTTPS in the latest Node CLI version of Lighthouse, an automated tool for improving web pages. The new audit in Lighthouse helps developers find resources. Help find resources a site loads using HTTP, and which of those are ready to be upgraded to HTTPS, simply changing the subsource reference to the HTTPS version. Now, my question to you is there a reason to still keep around HTTP? Is there a reason to use that? I'd be interested in knowing. Give me a call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. Is there a reason to keep HTTP around and not migrate to HTTPS? The reason I ask is because, quite frankly, I am not seeing a reason to keep HTTP around. I can do my best guess, and it takes some work to get there, but I don't really understand why we would want to keep HTTP around at this point. HTTPS is so simple to set up. It's so quick to set up. There was a time a couple of years ago, 5-10 years ago, where when you had HTTP, to set up HTTPS, it required an act of Congress, basically. You had to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You had to reconfigure a website and do all these crazy things. And then because certain programs or certain functions of the web server weren't designed to work around HTTPS, that it still didn't work properly and presented a problem for your customers or your clients or your website visitors. JJ4884 in the chat room says, well, what about for internal networking? Well, again, here's the thing. I can understand cutting down, actually purchasing signed certificates that are signed by a CA for things that are on the inside network, right? But the reality is when it comes to even things like my router, even things like, my broadcast appliances, all these things have web interfaces and I have to log into them. But at the end of the day, what advantage is there exactly in not having the traffic encrypted from one end to the other? And I was talking just before this show got over, our lead in Linux Unplugged, I was talking with Chris about it. And he was saying, the problem with having this discussion, the problem with even opening this can of worms is you get all of these people that get up on their high horse and they want to preach about it. And they want to say, oh, well, from where I'm standing, there's no reason why you wouldn't want to use HTTPS. And I'm not trying to preach at anyone. I'm not trying to get anyone's face and say you're an idiot if you're not using encrypted traffic, that your traffic is going to be manipulated. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying in this day and age, it is so stupid simple to set up HTTPS. And by the way, If you don't know how to set up HTTPS, if that's something that is unfamiliar to you, if that confuses you or you're concerned about it, we did a how-to video. The Ask Noah Show put together a step-by-step how-to video where we walked you through step-by-step how to set up an HTTPS server. And I think we did a pretty darn good job. We explain HTTPS, we explain the advantages of HTTPS, we explain how it works, and then we show you how to set up a Let's Encrypt certificate. Now, if you're not familiar with Let's Encrypt is a free certificate authority that is trusted by all major browsers, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, all of them, much like a traditional CA would be. But in Let's Encrypt's case, they don't charge you for that certificate. So you can have as many certificates as you want. The only downside to Let's Encrypt is that you must renew the certificate every 30 days. And there's a lot of people that they look up and they say, well, I don't have time to renew it every 30 days. Well, no problem. Our video is going to show you step by step how you can renew that certificate and integrate that and automate it. Mark calls. Hey, Mark, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah. I just had a question about setting up. I want to set up either a client-to-client OpenVPN connection or a SSH multi-hop tunnel. I have a server that I'm not using, so which one would you recommend more?
Okay, so walk me through your scenario a little bit. You have a server, and you want to VPN into that server?
Yeah, I'm just kind of playing around with it just because I'm not using it. I want to be more familiar with the technology.
Yeah, sure. That's a great way to play around with. That's a great reason to play around with stuff.
Yeah.
We need to dig in. I need a little bit more information before I can give you a recommendation, though, Mark. So you have a server, you want to VPN into it. It's just for fun. It's not, any business thing. But what are you VPNing from? Is it from just your laptop and you want to VPN into the server? Because I'll tell you where I'm going with this, Mark. You don't typically VPN into a server per se. You VPN into a secured network so that you can utilize those network resources. Now, you very well may VPN into a network where the only network resources is a single server. That's something that you could do, something you can do, something a lot of people do. But is there anything else on the network that you want to access other than that one particular server?
Let me give a better. I want to remotely connect into the server from somewhere that's not my house and connect into the server, and then from the server, then connect to the Movad server. And I use Movad VPN.
Okay.
So, is that possible?
Well, everything's possible. I shouldn't say everything's possible, but for the most part, when it comes to VPNs and how you can interconnect things, everything's possible. But I guess I guess I'm not entirely following you. So you want to VPN into this server, you want a VPN connection into the server, and then from the server, you want to use that to access other network resources?
Yeah, I kind of just want to obfuscate and tunnel the network as many times as I can, kind of just to obfuscate and make it more difficult to analyze traffic. But have you heard of WireGuard?
Yes.
Kind of like that, but I want to try it with SSH and OpenVPN before I go to something that complex.
Okay. I guess that's fair. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't, from a security standpoint, there's no real reason not to use WireGuard because it's designed to do what you're trying to do. And it's open source, so there's no reason to use it that way. As far as when it comes to complexity stuff, if you want the simplest way to establish a VPN connection, kind of what you're trying to do, there is a way to tunnel traffic over SSH. And it's sometimes referred to as the poor man's SSH, Mark, and we use it a lot anytime you don't have it's referred to as the poor man's VPN, excuse me. And we use it all the time when you have a business that doesn't have a proper VPN infrastructure set up, and we need to get access to the inside of their network. Oftentimes what we will do is tunnel our through over SSH our network traffic, and then we'll use that SSH tunnel to then facilitate the same kinds of things that we would do over VPN. What do I mean by those kinds of things? So let's say, for example, we're having a discussion in the chat room right now. We're talking about internal network appliances, and maybe we don't need HTTPS on those internal network appliances like printers and fax machines and stuff like that. Well, if we didn't have HTTPS on those appliances, we wanted to access them from the outside. One secure enough way to do that would be to establish a VPN tunnel, forward tunnel port 80 over that SSH encrypted tunnel, and then we can connect to those devices from outside of the firewall. And that's something that we can do. Okay. And that would be very, very simple. It's literally an SSH command, and I can put that command for you in the show notes. And that's you can do it. It doesn't require any special setup done. You have to do anything special. You just execute that SSH command. You tell it what port you want to on the remote side, on the local side, what you want to forward to, and you connect, and that's it.
Okay. I'm going to post a, have you heard of, what's it called? Darknet VPS?
Mm-hmm.
A really interesting specification. I'll post it in the Telegram room for you to look over.
You're talking about darknet.org, right?
And if you could, no, it was a server specification where they took obviously the Linux server, and they installed Squid and I think like 15 instances of Tor, and they took proxy chains, and they kind of, what I'm looking for here, fragmented out the connection of the Tor connection.
Okay.
I'll send you the specification. It's hard to describe, but that's kind of more so what I'm trying to go for. I guess I'm not really sure what I'm going for. I'm just trying to create something really interesting, I guess.
And here's the other thing, too, and I want to make sure I'm absolutely abundantly clear about this, Mark. Please do not think, oh, well, there's what I'm doing isn't important enough, or I don't have a reason to be doing this, so I shouldn't do it. Absolutely not. Yeah, no, I guess I can't say that definitively, but very close to, I'm very close to saying that every solution we have ever put into production at one time was a project that I thought had no real place in my basement. That's where a lot of stuff starts. We did a huge digital signage project a couple of months ago, and that project started on a Raspberry Pi in my basement, and I was playing with it, and I had no reason to have digital signage in my house. I just wanted to play with it because I thought it was a cool project. Ended up making me thousands and thousands of dollars because we sold it as a solution then. But there's always a good reason to play with stuff. I love playing with stuff. I solve problems, and well, I'll get to this later in the hour, but I was at another facility today, and I was playing with stuff, and nobody asked me to solve problems. Nobody asked me to look into how things work. I just like to know because that's the kind of person I am. I like playing with stuff. I like figuring stuff out. Jeremy calls from Florida. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the Ask Noah Show. Whoa!
I got a question for you.
Okay. Go for it.
I've got a question about point-of-sale systems for bars. I'm setting up a point-of-sale system for our local VFW, and they're looking for basically 2 terminals at the bar and one back at the office to kind of keep track of things, like the way they do their accounting.
Okay, is all it's doing is selling? All you're doing is selling items. You're just like they're marking an item for sale, and keeping track of inventory. Is that simple, or are they wanting to scale past that?
I don't think it's going to scale much past that. It's a small local VFW. I think really all it'll ever really be is 2 terminals and then a computer in the back to read, the receipts at the end of the night. I'd like it to be a little more geared toward bars because they're more of a bar than anything else, so they keep track of tabs, things like that. And I wasn't sure if there was an open source solution that would cover that. I'm
not aware of an open source solution, and I have to be honest with you, Jeremy. I'm going to go ahead and put you back on hold because you've got a ton of background noise. But the solution that we go with, and I have put this in bars. I put this in bars. I put this in small diners. I put this in even obviously small retail shops. We actually for a very short time used it here at Altaspeed, but it didn't offer some of the integration features that we needed, so we moved on to it. And actually, Jupiter Broadcasting uses this for all of their live events, and it is Square. And Square they have inventory management. You can use Android or iOS tablets. You can access it from a web UI and configure it that way. All of those things work, and it doesn't cost. There's no monthly cost. There's no recurring monthly cost. And for anybody that's in the POS world, for anybody that's in the credit card, in the credit card world, you have to understand that the cost, the ongoing monthly cost, used to be a big deal. Years ago, when we first started Altispeed, little backstory, we were looking for a credit card processor and contacted a number of different vendors, I guess, as it were, and said, this is what we're trying to do. And they said, okay, for $45 a month, we'll sell you a $500 credit card reader, and then you can process credit cards at 2.5% or something like that. And the problem I had in the very early days of Altispeed was I wanted to accept credit cards. You basically had to. Still have to. That's even more true today. But I knew I wanted to accept credit cards. It was essential for our business model. But there was no way I was spending $45 a month because I had no guarantee I was going to even make $45 the next month. I mean, money was super tight. I had $200 to start with. That was a quarter of my entire startup budget on 1 month of credit card processing. No way I'm doing that. And so I searched around until I found it wasn't Square, but it was a Square competitor, and started processing credit cards on them. And we actually, even today, we still run a certain amount of our business through them, just out of loyalty, just because they helped us when nobody else would. The issue is they got bought out by a larger, not so great company, and now they have some not so great policies. But if I was in your boat, if I woke up in your shoes, I would absolutely go with Square. And that's, like I said, we even use it here for smaller things. If we're out on the field or we have to take a payment from somebody. And the only issue with Square that you run into, and that's why I asked how much, if it's going to go past basic inventory management, we have a rather complicated inventory situation, right? Because we have inventory that's in the shop here. We have inventory that we own, but is getting shipped that hasn't arrived yet because it's on order, as it were. We have inventory that we own that drop ships that goes to various clients. For instance, I don't want 300 access points sitting in my shop, but I need to know that if tomorrow a hotel calls us and says, yeah, we're a hotel in, Bumsville, South Dakota, and we want you to install access points, I need to know that I can get 300 access points to them tomorrow or the next day or whatever, right? And so we have what we call dropship, but we own that inventory. We have to track that. And then, of course, we have inventory that we sold. And there has to be a system to track all of that and keep track of all of that. And so the issue with Square is it doesn't do anywhere near that level of inventory management and doesn't have the ability to interface into our accounting software and our ticket software and all of that. And so that gets to be a problem. The chat room Velitas says, another angle, saying HTTP and HTTPS with errors are not secure implies that people can relax with other websites when they might actually be very untrustworthy with their data and the other end false sense of security. Now, that's an interesting take on this. I like that. I like that a lot, and I'll tell you why. In the video, in the how-to video that we put together, one of the things we talk about is domain-level verification. What is domain-level verification? So, simple example that we gave in the video. We bought the domain del.casa, DELL.CASA. And the idea behind doing that was to prove if Jupiter Broadcasting owns jupiterbroadcasting.com, for example, but I could buy Jupiter Broadcasting, maybe .net or .org, or I don't know which top-level domain is available. But if I bought one of those domains, there is no verification process that I have to prove I work for Jupiter Broadcasting before I can buy any one of those top-level domains. And yet, when you set up a Let's Encrypt certificate, or a number of different CAs that you can buy, with VeriSign and all those other companies, there's plenty of them that you can buy, that is a top-level domain. You can buy just a basic SSL certificate, and you can generate it and you can install it. It doesn't check for anything other than that the DNS record matches the server that it's pointing to it. So it receives a request from, in our case, del.casa, and the server that we have set up, we have in fact registered an SSL certificate with del.casa. And so what it does is says, okay, this is the same server that you meant to connect to. And then, of course, there's a cryptographic signature that verifies every single time you connect to that site. So every time you get a visitor that connects to a site, the certificate authority is proving to the client that yes, in fact, it's the same computer that you've connected to last time. It knows that that is the same certificate over and over, and so on and so forth. What the domain level verification does not do is it does not check to see if you actually work for that organization, if you are legally allowed to represent that organization. And so we took Dell.com and we moved Dell.com to a server that we hosted on DigitalOcean, pointed Dell.casa to it, registered a valid HTTPS certificate, so the user gets the little green padlock showing that they're on a secure site. And in fact, all of the content that was on Dell.com, we changed. We obliterated it. We put all sorts of crazy, funny things that, like, Dell hates Windows and Dell is now shipping exclusively Linux laptops. And funny little side story, all of those links on that website actually worked. And if you clicked on the order link, just the way that their cart system was set up, it would take you back to Dell.com and add that laptop to your cart, which I thought was pretty funny. But all of that was an elaborate way to exemplify that domain level verification doesn't verify that you actually work for the site. So what Veritas in the chat room is pointing out is he's absolutely right. He's 100% correct about this. If you have a user out there that goes to one of these new sites that has an HTTPS certificate, and so now they get the little green padlock, and it says the connection is secure, and they go to and it says enter your credit card here, and they put their mouse cursor in that little text box, and they get the little pop-up that says your information is secure. Well, it kind of implies that that's a safe place to put your credit card, when in fact, I could just set up a web server, register a Let's Encrypt cert, and ask for people's credit card numbers and take that money and go spend it on all sorts of nefarious things, right? And so there is no, and so he's absolutely right. There is no verification that the site that you're connecting to is trustworthy. The only guarantee is that the data that flows from your computer to their server is encrypted and thus cannot be compromised, reasonably compromised, I guess I should say, by an attacker. So I think that's a very good point. That's a take. I didn't originally think about this. Veritas says, I thought of another angle. It's easy for Google to say HTTP is not secure, but to startups, this is harmful, and HTTPS is now cheap to cert, but still requires more traffic, more difficulties to scale, and can hurt small and upcoming businesses. I'd be interested to hear what you're basing that off of. I have run HTTPS certs on, I've run servers that have SSL on them, and those servers have 500 megs of RAM and a 10 gig hard drive. It's on a throwaway VM. I mean, any lower, and I don't think the VM would physically run a modern operating system. So I disagree with the standpoint. I agree with your standpoint that it falsely gives security to some users. I disagree with the standpoint that it's harmful to startups. I don't think it is at all. And I think that there is a misnomer out there. I think there's a misconception that it's difficult to set HTTPS up. I also think that there's a misconception out there that it's expensive to set HTTPS up, both of which are untrue, both of which we have exemplified in our how-to video, which we'll have linked in the show. Again, the phone number, lines are open, 1-855-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. You can email the show, live@asknoahshow.com. Veritas responds, he says, honestly, I have no idea what the change in requirements for HTTPS was, mostly playing devil's advocate there, just trying to think of points of contention. I'm very pro HTTPS myself. Yeah, and most of us are. Most of us are pro HTTPS. And even those of us who don't swear by it, and I'll go on the record right now and just tell you, AskNoahShow.com, not HTTPS. Altispeed.com, not HTTPS. Why? There's no secure information that transitions either of those two websites. There's a demo card processor thing on Altispeed.com that we were setting up to test for our new site. It's not actually connected to anything yet. But, and our new site will absolutely have HTTPS. But, and it's not that I'm not too stupid. I mean, I made the how-to video, right? If anybody knows how to set up HTTPS, it's this guy right here. But there is a time overhead there's a time overhead, and there's also everything that I do, there has to be a reason to do it. So if I was setting up a server from scratch today, yeah, I'd probably throw HTTPS on it. Interestingly enough, I can't put HTTPS on AskNoahShow.com because the registrar, which it is registered with, gives us the hosting for it for free. And so they don't, and so there's no way for me to use Let's Encrypt. I'd actually have to purchase a certificate from them because I don't have access to generate my own certificate and put it on there and schedule the renewal and all that stuff. So there might be a reason, but that's a pretty esoteric use case. Speaking of esoteric use cases, DJ DC in the chat room says, what about computing? How does your 486 handle modern HTTPS? I'm going to go ahead and say that there aren't a lot of 486s that are out there that we're worried about at this point. Again, phone lines, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. I want to get to an email that was sent in here. This is Lewis writes in to live@asknoahshow.com. You can too. He says, Noah, I bought a Surface Pro 1 following your lead a couple of years ago. I've got it up and running with Ubuntu Mate. I'm mostly happy with the results, but I'm getting to the point where I want to experience the machine that isn't hindered by it being dual booted in Mate. I'm still doing dual booting with Windows 10 for some days when I just need to get some work done. This is my daily driver away from the office. Have you found a way on yours to auto-display the on-screen keyboard when the keyboard is disconnected? When I'm booting into Windows 10, I pull the Surface away from its keyboard, and when you select a text field, it automatically fills the screen with an on-screen keyboard. I'd like to achieve the same seamless workflow. I'm currently using the outboard on-screen keyboard, but would be willing to switch if necessary. Let me know what you think and keep up the great work on your show. I love it, Lewis. Thanks, Lewis, for the email. I really appreciate it. So for those of you who don't know, I do have a Surface Pro first generation. I really like the Surface Pro first generation. You have to understand something. When Microsoft made this piece of hardware, it's a really fantastic piece of hardware, and it does a lot of things very, very well. So first of all, they didn't underspec the thing, which is my biggest concern. Okay? They spec this thing with an i5 and an latest gen i5 and latest gen i7. They gave it a 1080p display, and it's a really sharp 1080p IPS display. It's a really sharp looking machine. And as I got to using it, I found that just basically right out of the box, just about everything works under Linux. Now, there were a couple of things that didn't. First of all, I can't get it to suspend properly, which would be really nice because in the tablet form version thing, it would be great to just tap that button and have the computer go to sleep and then be able to wake it up at will. Couldn't get that to work. Second thing I couldn't get to work is a Bluetooth paired mouse. So at the moment, anytime I want to power it up, I have to use the touchpad. I should say that the Bluetooth mouse, it's the one that specifically came with it. That's the one that doesn't work. I'm sure a standard generic Bluetooth wireless mouse would work just fine. But I have to use the trackpad, and I also have to shut the machine down every time I'm not using it. And so those are the two shortcomings. Now, as far as the on-screen keyboard, yes, the on-screen keyboard pops up when you put your field in a text field, but I have only gotten that to work on Ubuntu with Unity. I have not gotten it to work on Ubuntu Mate, I've not gotten it to work on KDE, and I've not gotten it to work on GNOME. And so that's a problem because, as we're all aware, Canonical has kindly discontinued Unity. The good news is there are more and more people that are trying to tackle some of the issues on the Surface, and not just the Surface first generation, but the Surface 2, the Surface 3, the Surface 4. All of those are getting a lot of attention. And I'm happy to see that they are, because I think they're actually really fantastic machines, even if they are made by Microsoft. And for the most part, they run Linux pretty well. I was actually speaking with a gentleman, I think over Linux Fest Northwest. He's an electrician out in California that came to do some electrical work for Chris, and then consequently came to Linux Fest Northwest. And I was chatting with him. He has a Surface Pro 4, and he was able to successfully get Linux working on it. And that's what he's using on his daily driver. So yeah, no, very much stick with it. Give Unity a shot just to see that it works. And, one thing you could do, you could, in theory anyway, install, what was the last version with Unity? I think it's 1704. They made the switch 1710. You could install, I wouldn't want to do that though. You want the 5-year. You could install 1604. You'd still have, let's see here, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You'd have like 3-4 years and all you got to figure out is a touchscreen keyboard or the, dynamically popping up on-screen keyboard in the next 5 years. I think they're, whatever we're down to, 3 years or whatever. That's possible. So I might check that out. Again, open phones this hour. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email live@asknoahshow.com. Forbes.com headline, Ditching Windows. 2 weeks with Ubuntu on Linux on the Dell XPS 13. For many years, my fear of Linux outweighed my grievances with Windows. In the early 2000s, I experimented with distributions like SUSE, Red Hat, Debian, because I was enthralled with seeing the other side of the desktop PC environment. I wanted to tinker. I wanted to become an expert on Googling driver solutions, and I learned basic terminal commands out of necessity. But now I'm older, and I have less patience, and I just want my system to work out of the box. I went through the same paces, downloading a USB stick, booting up the live version of Ubuntu 18.04, which includes 5 years of security patches and updates, and I had a look around. I clicked the install button, and Ubuntu prompted me with several options for partitioning my internal SSD, including blasting the entire drive away. Tempting. I was feeling lucky, so I decided to take the plunge. My surprise began with the speed of Ubuntu's installation. It took literally 4 minutes from the time I started till the time I finished, including the selection of my region, a username, password, and Wi-Fi to download the updates. 4 minutes in, that's an extreme installation setup. Within 4 minutes, I was ready to log in and get to work. Beyond that, there were no additional drivers needed. Ubuntu properly detected all of my XPS 13 hardware, including Wi-Fi adapter and the gorgeous 4K touchscreen. Function keys, touchpad, webcam. Yep, on my first visit to my GNOME-based desktop environment, I even noticed that the font scaling was set to 200% to compensate for the display's high resolution, and there was a nightlight option for reducing blue light in darker environments. Awesome. Were this Windows, my next stop would have been installing a good web browser. Firefox was already there in the favorite stock, so syncing my bookmarks passwords was as easy as logging in. Next, there was LibreOffice. It was there too, and while not quite as slick as the Microsoft Office, it has the benefit of being quite functional, and the best of all, free. Now I'd need to install things like VLC, Spotify, Telegram, Slack, meaning multiple websites, and downloading packages and then installing them while stepping through the various license agreements and setup options for each piece of software. And what he leaves out, but I will include, is you would have to not necessarily just visit their website, but then you'd have to navigate the debs and the RPMs and all that stuff. And if I had a dime, I would say there are 2 calls I can count on to come into Altispeed every single week, and they have since basically the day we opened our doors. The first one, by far the most common one, is I turned on my computer and it says no system disk or disk error. What do I do? And the answer is unplug the USB drive from somewhere in the computer and restart. And then they say, well, I don't have a USB drive. And you say, yes, you do. Just look around. And then they argue with a little bit, and then eventually they find the USB drive. And then like probably once every 2 years or 3 years, you actually find somebody with a dead hard drive. But 99.999% of the time, that's the answer to that question. And it comes in, I can absolutely count on it coming in once a week. The second question that comes in, and I would guess this is probably once every 2 weeks, maybe, but it for certain every month, is I'm trying to download X. Do I want the 32-bit version or the 64-bit version? And do I want the deb or the RPM or the tar.zzz? And we have to answer that question. And I can count on those 2 questions coming in absolutely every month. And with the non-system disk or disk error, that question comes in once a week and has for 10 years, and I have no expectations that it will stop. So this article goes on to continue, meaning multiple website visits, download various packages, installing them while stepping through the various license agreements and setup options for each piece of software. Except the Ubuntu Snap Store included the free software center were the only destinations that I'd need. The breadth of software that you can install with a single click is outstanding, at least for me. Discord, Spotify, Skype, VLC, Telegram, OBS, Slack, GIMP, Audacity, and various ebook readers, and tons more to explore. I have to say, the only enormous selection of software here can be daunting. Due to more than 80 separate audio and video players that actually exist, apparently that they do, and I can't stress what a relief and time saver it was just to click and install and be done with it. I'd also like to stress emphatically that this is simply one guy's experience, but it's been an overwhelmingly positive one. I'm not trying to sell you on Ubuntu, so I haven't wasted precious paragraphs towing the canonical PR line or listing the technical features. View it more as an informational journey. I, as a tech journalist, know that writing about Linux doesn't exactly bring in the clicks. But that said, the journey has been so refreshing, I felt compelled to cover it. Now, this is a guy who is writing in Forbes, right? He's a tech journalist, but he's writing in Forbes. looked him up on Twitter, added him on Facebook, and he's a fairly successful journalist, tech journalist. And I reached out to him and I said, would you come on the program and talk about this? This is an amazing experience. This is what I tell my listeners about every single week. I come down these stairs, sit down in this chair, turn this microphone on, and talk to you guys about the advantages of using Linux and open source software. It's more secure, it's more stable, it's more cost effective. It provides you with a better quality of service. The software works better. All of those things. And here is somebody who, without my help, somehow figured this out. Shocking, I know. So I reached out to him. I said, would you be willing to come to come on the show? And he said, yeah, I think that would be interesting. And so we're gonna keep in contact. We're gonna see if we can get him on the show. And I want to pick his brain about his perceived impression of Linux, what Linux was going to be, and then what actually happened, what his experience was once he actually got it installed, because it was literally night and day. And I bring this story to you on this program to illustrate a couple of things. One, the desktop market has completely shifted in the last 5 years so much it should make your head spin. It does mine. I want to go back to this article. I want to look at the list of software that he's talking about. Listen to this list of software. Tell me what you notice about these pieces of software. Discord, Spotify, Skype, VLC, Telegram, OBS, Slack, GIMP, and Audacity. Now, the list of software that he's getting, if you read this article carefully, if you read through it, there's a couple of pieces of software like LibreOffice, which he specifically says I would prefer to be using Microsoft Office because I think they got a little bit more of a refined product, but LibreOffice does the job good enough. And then he goes on to talk about all this other software that he just had to install because that's the software that he uses. Now that's interesting to me, and I think it illustrates. I think it highlights and exemplifies something that I have suspected for a long time, but this story brings it out perfectly, and that is two things. One, Microsoft is moving to a cloud-based service. If you look at Microsoft's marketing campaign and PR stuff, it's 365, 365, 365, 365. They want people on services. Why? Because that's where Microsoft makes money. If you look at what Microsoft reps are telling clients when they sit down and say, what should I go with? They say, well, you could buy traditional Office, but if you do, it'll be out of date in the next year, and then Susie won't be able to open Frank's documents, and Frank won't be able to open Billy's documents. That's the game they try and play. So they say, just pay your $99 a year, and then you have access to the software for life. That's what they want to do. That's their business model. That's the direction they want to go. And guess what, guys? Office 365 works fantastic on Linux. I use it all the time. I don't have my own subscription, but we have clients that use it, and it works just great on Linux. But then he goes to talk about this other software that he absolutely has to have. Discord, Spotify, Skype, VLC, Telegram, OBS, Slack, GIMP, and Audacity. Okay? Listen to those pieces of software, and what is it that those apps have in common? What do you notice here? Discord, Electron, Spotify, Electron, Skype, Electron, Slack, Electron. Are you noticing a pattern here? Every one of those apps are not only available in the Snap Store, but they are all written in Electron. And this is the third episode we ever did of the Ask Noah Show. The fourth episode, we had Martin Wimpers, the lead developer for the Ubuntu Mate project, and one of the people on the desktop side at Canonical. And we asked him, we said, what's the biggest piece of technology that's coming out? What's the biggest piece of technology that is going to shape the Linux world specifically, but the software world? And he said, Electron, because these people can write these apps one time, and you can run it on a Mac, and you can run it on a Linux, and you can run it on a Windows, and it doesn't matter. They only have one code base to target, and you can run that sucker on anything. And so when you combine stuff like that, when you combine Electron apps with the Snap Store, and by the way, from what I'm told, not a Snap developer myself, but I know a lot of them, it is very, very simple. It's like a single command to take a Electron app and turn it into a Snap. When you combine that, when you do that, you are now taking the experience that people have come to expect from the tablets and phones, and you're bringing it to a desktop. And when I say the desktop, I'm not talking about Mac OS, and I'm not talking about Windows. I'm talking about GNU/Linux. Now, Snaps they are working on getting Snaps to work across Windows and Mac OS. And I think as those things come to fruition, I think I think then snaps are only going to become more relevant. But as it stands right now, you have people that have a preconceived notion that Linux is a difficult, complicated operating system to use that is technically challenging. And you watch them sit down and open up on this XPS 13, which is a competitor to the MacBook, and I would argue a physically better machine, better made machine, better supported machine, and more flexible machine than a traditional MacBook. But you look at these people that have a preconceived notion against Linux, and as they walk into it, they go, man, this is not the Linux I remember from 10 years ago. And I'd go as far as to say that wouldn't be the Linux experience you would have had even 5 years ago, because you still would have been struggling for apps 5 years ago. Again, the phone lines are open, 1-855-NOAH, it's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Emacs Romance says, for snaps, they don't work without systemd. And that's true, but again, there's always going to be somebody out there somewhere that has that one script or that one program or that one reason or that one thing that that doesn't work with systemd, and so they're against it. But let me tell you something, that the systemd ship is so far sailed that I don't even want to get into it. When you have commercial servers, enterprise grade servers that you're responsible for, and people pay you thousands and thousands of dollars to keep up and running, and that server goes down, you have to restart that thing. And that restart time goes from 30 to 45 seconds to, well, actually minutes. There were times where you'd have minutes as various pieces initialized and came up, especially if it was connected to network attached storage and all that. I mean, boot time went from minutes to seconds. And it makes all the difference in the world. Never mind the fact that we now have a way more consistent workflow as far as troubleshooting errors, where to look for things, how to start and stop things. All of that stuff is all tied together for a more seamless experience. Do I think that maybe it was rushed a little bit because there was a large company that exerted a lot of pressure to get it production ready before maybe it was absolutely 100% production ready? Maybe. But there is no doubt in my mind that systemd is a better way to go, and I don't even want to have that conversation, to be honest with you. Get open phones, 1-855-450-NOAH, it's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. HackerNews.com headline, Microsoft releases PowerShell core as a Linux snap package. Now, there isn't a lot in this article that I could read to you that would enlighten you. But I put this article in the show, and I dovetailed it onto this XPS experience from this guy, because I think it continues down a narrative that I think is becoming more and more real every single day, and that is this. Linux is becoming the place where desktop users go, and macOS and Windows is becoming the place that desktop users flee. Apple has a large majority of their money tied up in iOS and iOS development and iOS devices, and if you look at every single time in the last 10 years that Apple has made a significant change to a MacBook, there have been significant drawbacks or problems with them. So this latest generation, they just came out with the i9s, and for the first time in probably Apple's history of time, they finally have current generation processors in their MacBook, and guess what? They're all overheating. I went into Best Buy just because I wanted to look at it, I wanted to play with it, and I wanted to kind of get a feel about it, and I kind of knew we were going to talk about some of this stuff on the show. And when I started talking to the sales guy, I said, how many of the 2018s have you sold? None of them. Why not? Well, they're all in the back. Why are they all in the back? Well, because we got the last generations out here. And after like 4 or 5 rounds of digging in questions, he tells me that there's a lot of complaints and there's a lot of problems, and then a lot of people have brought them back and had issues and stuff like that. And so what they've done to incentivize the sale of the older ones is they're running a sale on the older generation until Apple can get some of these issues worked out. And it doesn't surprise me really, because other than revving the generation of processor, they've not made any substantial upgrades. The RAM is still soldered in there; it's still 16 gigs as far as I know, at least as far as Best Buy offers. The keyboard hasn't been improved at all, so you're still buying an overpriced piece of junk. And when you start looking at that and saying, okay, Apple just released arguably one of the most advanced phones to ever hit the market, with the iPhone 10. And not that I'm an iPhone user or ever will be, I can't stand it, but but there's really no denying that iPhone 10 users, or iPhone X, whatever you call it, are very happy with their iPhone 10X. And meanwhile, you have a lot of other people that are Motorola users, Samsung users, LG users, whatever, and they're not happy with whatever device that they chose. And a lot of that is because obviously some of those are budget devices. I'm personally very happy with my Pixel, but I know a lot of people that weren't happy with the Google Pixel. Talked to a gentleman the other day who said he got a Pixel for free, got a Google Pixel for free from Google. His son did, and he took it and played with it for a little bit, and eventually ended up giving it up and said, "Yeah, I'm just not gonna. It's just not for me." So Apple, they're seeing tremendous success on the iPhone, on the iPad, stuff like that. The iPad has become the work tablet to go to. Meanwhile, their computers, the Mac Pro is a joke. There's no professional that uses that trash can. No, I shouldn't say no professional. There aren't many professionals that are willing to use the trash can with no expandability and no way to reach out. They say that they're going to redesign that and it's going to be more modular, but one, who knows if that will actually mean back to PCI form factor where you can put PCI cards in. Far more likely it's going to be Apple modules that you can buy ridiculously overpriced market, and you can shove these Apple cards in there and then you can connect to all the stuff you should have been able to do. And aside from that, they invested a whole bunch of money into redesigning not the Mac Pro, not the trash can with the expandability thing. That's on the back burner. What's on the front burner? An iMac, an all-in-one. So, and then they refreshed when they went to the touch bar and stuff, they refreshed those. So there isn't a lot of innovation happening inside of their desktop/laptop market share. It's all happening in tablets and touchpads. And that doesn't entirely surprise me because that's where Apple stands to make the most money. Meanwhile, you look at Windows, they're claiming that Windows 10 is going to be the last version of Windows. And I have yet to meet a Windows 10. I've actually been collecting screen caps because I was going to put a collage together and tweet it out before this episode. Didn't get around to it. But every time I go on Facebook now, there is somebody complaining about Windows 10. 7 seems to have gotten to a place where people can tolerate it. Everybody hates Windows 10. It updates too much. It nags me too much. In fact, the very article that we referenced in this show, the very thing that got him started on Linux was the fact that his Windows 10 box, he was in the middle of something critically important. The machine restarted without talking to him, and when it came back up, it went into update mode and started updating, and he couldn't exit out of the updates. And we've covered story after story after story of various issues with Windows 10 and various problems with Windows 10. And I see it on a daily basis. I have to pay other people to troubleshoot some of this stuff because it drives me so nuts to sit in front of a working computer, that is my laptop with KDE Neon on it, all day long. Or actually, I'm sorry, it has Kubuntu now. But it drives me nuts to sit in front of this thing that works so well and then have to go back and troubleshoot things where you can't even I can't even drag an icon off the start menu and onto the desktop to create a shortcut anymore. That's how screwed up Windows 10 is. And so if that's the market if that's where we're at a computing market share where you have all of your favorite apps are coming to Linux. And all of those, and now you've got things like even PowerShell, so Windows administrators can even get a lot of their work done. PowerShell is incredibly powerful. We're going to have a guy on here in just a couple of minutes as soon as I get to him. He's going to talk about that. PowerShell is incredibly powerful. And now you have Apple trying to kill off their PC, their whatever you want to call it, computer line, because they want to run commercials about little kids going, "What's a laptop?" And you have Microsoft wanting to go to more service-oriented a more service-oriented business model and discontinue a lot of their investment in infrastructure. We saw Microsoft discontinue the people that are responsible for pushing the Windows boat forward. Okay, as we watch all of those things happen, I'm left to wonder, where are computer users like me going to wind up? Well, I mean, I know where I'm going to wind up. Where are you going to wind up if you're not on Linux? Where are you going? Because I think that's where the football's going. I'm interested to hear what you think. 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email live at AskNoahShow.com. Chris joins us from West Virginia. Hey, Chris, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. So, Chris, you are, I know they put a gun to your head and tell you that you are going to maintain a certain amount of Windows boxes or they're going to fire you. So you don't have much of a choice in the matter a lot of the time, but you have a lot of experience doing stuff on Windows, and I know that you and I talked about PowerShell, and you said that it's a recent tool. It's come out fairly recently, relatively speaking, to the age of Windows, and so you have a lot of ways of working around PowerShell, and obviously one of the advantages of Windows is that it is very graphic, user intense, GUI heavy, so you're using a lot of graphical interfaces, and that's the way you like to do things. But tell me what your first thoughts about PowerShell coming to Linux. When I tell you that now I can, I have it installed right here. I can type what is it, PSSH, something like that. Yeah, here we go. And I get PowerShell running on my laptop, and now I can execute PowerShell commands.
Well, my first experience with it today, I sudo apt-get install PowerShell -- classic, and I loaded it and I ran it, and then I typed exit, and that was about the extent of it. But like you said, I've been doing this Windows administration stuff now for whole hog, basically me for the last 10 years, and PowerShell, while I know it is extremely powerful. You can do almost anything you can do in the GUI. I know that you can do with PowerShell, and I believe it was Server 2012. Microsoft introduced the Server Core, where there is no GUI installed on the server itself. You can still RDP into it, and as you well know, RDP is not a grabbing a screen capture. It's
right.
all, just sending commands. So the server core does have a GUI if you remote it. Well, to me, that's fine. I have become so used to it, it's almost muscle memory for what I need to do in Windows, that I've one or two obscure tasks where I've needed PowerShell. I've Googled something, it's helped me fix an issue or something, and I've managed to change minor things in a script. In a script. To me, it's not that big a deal. There might be some Windows administrators out there who do a lot of things with PowerShell. I know it's a very powerful scripting language. To me, it's hey, I'm glad it's now on Linux because my box at work is Linux, and I do all my Windows admin through RDP.
Right.
I have a virtual.
What does it mean? What does it mean for us Linux users that Microsoft is moving? They've moved Azure they run Azure on Linux. They want Bash on Windows. They want now PowerShell on Linux, and they want to start looking at running these things. Headless Windows. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm not seeing a lot of people that are going to use that. But what does that mean about Microsoft's direction? They're no longer trying to push Windows. And they are actively trying to push their stuff to Linux and push Linux stuff into Windows.
To use another podcaster's metaphor, can I fry some conspiracy bacon?
Yeah, go for it.
It is my personal opinion that Microsoft has stopped caring about the desktop.
Yeah.
Windows 10 has had so many changes from one iteration to the next that it is actually affecting the way Microsoft handles group policies. Let me turn that around. The group policies are changing how it's handled on the desktop. I have seen things like printers stop being able to deploy printers to users through group policy, and the only thing I can pin it on is every time another version of Windows 10 comes out, it seems to me that various group policy things change. We used to send in our domain printers based on where students were in the building, and this hallway might want this printer or whatever. And I used to be able to do that based on grade level and assign that to student user group policies. And I would get phone call after phone call. Well, all of a sudden these printers aren't showing up. Well, I had to turn it all around, and I started assigning policies via Workstation. And then printers start working again. I can't point at anything other than there's been a major update to Windows 10, there's been some updates on the Windows servers, and now these policies that used to work for years have stopped working.
Fantastic.
Back to something you said earlier, Windows 10,
it's a mess.
I don't know what they're doing when they do an update, just a standard, Patch Tuesday update. It takes a long time.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it absolutely blows my mind. And I thank you for coming on the program and kind of chatting about this with us. I think it really speaks to the direction that Microsoft is going, and we're going to continue to watch it. We'll continue to do hours of meticulous research so that you don't have to, and we'll present it here on a 1-hour radio show for you, and provide that available for download, and you can kind of condense it. But we're going to watch it. I think the next year is going to be a really interesting time in the technology space, particularly as it relates to desktop use. I want to give a plug to a personal venture that I'm going on, I guess you could say. I met up with, I got a call a couple of weeks ago from a gentleman who works for another radio station, and he said, "Hey, I've heard you on the radio, and I kind of understand. I like your worldview. I like your take on things, and I was wondering. It's very difficult to find in radio somebody who has a similar light view on things, and is capable of running their own audio board and stuff like that. And do you do your show by yourself?" I said, "Yeah, I set the whole studio up, so yeah, I can run a board." And he said, "Would you come fill in for me on this other radio station?" And this was a large commercial radio station. So I think the parent company owns like 30 some radio stations all around the country. Don't quote me on that number. I was reading they have these plaques up in their lobby. I was reading this today, but anyway, I've spent all week there, taking some time off of Altispeed, and I'm there. I've been there all week, and I'm training in and learning their way of doing things. And these are some really, really, really talented broadcasters. Some people that have worked in this industry for a very long time and have developed a very refined set of skills. And just being around them and being able to sit there and watch these interactions, where one guy will come out to a more experienced guy and he'll say, "I'm thinking about going on the air and I want to talk about this topic. And how do I bring this up to listeners? How do I present this in a way that would be compelling to them? Or how do I ask this question? How do I elicit a response? How do I do this?" And to hear that kind of conversation and be around that kind of professionalism is absolutely outstanding, and has been a blessing to me like I could never begin to describe. So I'm so thankful for the opportunity. So I'm going to finish up training the end of this week. And then next week, my buddy Brad Schmidt is going to be is not going to be doing his show Monday and Tuesday. So Monday and Tuesday from 2 to 5 p.m., I'm going to be filling in for my friend Brad Schmidt over at KNOX on 1310 AM, 107.9 FM. And they stream online, knoxradio.com. And I talked to the program director, and he said, feel free to pimp it on social media. Feel free to talk to people about it. And I said, here's the thing. My audience, the Ask Noah Show, if I ask them to do something, they will do it. If I tell them I'm going to be live Monday and Tuesday from 2 to 5 p.m., if you guys have questions, you want to join me for that discussion, you guys know where I stand politically, so if that's not for you, by all means, feel free to just ignore it. But if you do like that kind of discussion, or you do want to engage, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, if you want to have a discussion, I want to have that discussion. And so I invite you to join me Monday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central, Tuesday from 2 to 5 Central. I will tweet out the time. We'll have a link for the streaming in the show notes. But yeah, it's knoxradio.com. And it's fantastic. They have I think they said it was a $2.5 million broadcast facility that they bought, all digital IP, which is actually what we have here at the Ask Noah Show. We have the exact same technology. We just have it at a much, 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 much smaller scale. But being over there and getting to play with some of that stuff and play with some of that technology, and like I said, really the advantage for me is being able to work with people that do this all day, and they were kind enough to just say, "Hey, here you go." They show me where the buttons are on the board, and I think by the third hour I was there today, I had a mic on. I was sitting in front of the board and got to drive the show for the last hour. And so, they've been very kind to me, and they've been very welcoming of me, and I hope to be able to give back and show up there and do Brad's show justice. I don't think I'd be able to fill his shoes, but at least be able to fill some airtime until he gets back. So that's Monday at 2 to 5 p.m. Central, Tuesday 2 to 5 p.m. Central. There won't be anything technology. Please don't call that station and start asking me technical questions, because I don't think their audience will appreciate it. But if you want to talk about public policy, if you want to talk about politics, if you want to talk about life in general, those kinds of things are pretty cool. And I would definitely welcome those calls, and we'll take them, and we'll have fun with it. And I'd like to give them I'd like the Ask Noah Show to make an appearance. I think that would be pretty cool. Ask Noah Show audience. And did you guys know this episode is available as a downloadable podcast? That's right. To subscribe to the feed or download the latest episode, visit podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find not only the latest episodes, but all of the articles and materials referenced in this episode. You can get the latest, of course, by following us on Twitter at Ask Noah Show. The Ask Noah Show continues next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. A huge thanks to Vox Telesis for providing our phone systems. Ben, our producer, Sarah, our Carl Skinner. This hour of the show may be over, but there's plenty more content for you 24/7 at AskNoahShow.com.